Now, May 29th is the International Day of United Nations Peacekeepers. It is a day to pay tribute to the men and women who have served with the UN to keep international peace and security over the past 70 years. UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres is in Mali to meet the Blue Helmets, those who serve at the deadliest UN mission in the world. Our UN correspondent Liling Tan tells us more.
On Tuesday, May 29th, the International Day of UN Peacekeepers, the Secretary-General will be in the Malian capital of Bamako to meet with members of the UN mission there known as MINUSMA. There, the Secretary-General will pay tribute to the 42 peacekeepers and personnel killed in action at this UN mission that has suffered the greatest loss in 2017 for the fourth straight year. Here's part of the UN chief's message ahead of the visit.
This year, I will spend the International Day of United Nations Peacekeepers in Mali to express my solidarity with colleagues facing high casualties and enormous volatility. As we recognize a legacy of service and sacrifice around the world, I am also committed to taking action for peacekeeping, action to make our operations safer and more effective in today's challenging environments.
The Secretary-General also repeated his promise to promote human rights and address sexual exploitation and abuse, which has long plagued UN peacekeeping operations. He will be accompanied by Peacekeeping Chief Jean-Pierre Lacroix, by Under-Secretary-General for Field Support Atul Kare, and with the head of UNICEF, Henrietta Fore. He will also meet with the Malian president as well as Mali's Prime Minister. Now, the occasion will also allow the UN chief and his agency to thank more than 1 million men and women who have served under the United Nations flag, including those currently serving in 14 missions across 4 continents. Now, more than 3,700 peacekeepers and UN mission personnel have died in service since the UN's first mission was authorized on May 29th in 1948. And when the Secretary-General returns to New York later in the week, he will officiate at a wreath-laying ceremony here to honor fallen peacekeepers. Liling Tan, CGTN, New York.
Well, as we mentioned earlier, May the 29th is the International Day of the United Nations Peacekeepers. It is a day to pay tribute to the men and women who've served with the United Nations to keep international peace and security over the past 70 years. For more on that story, Dr. Mustafa Ali, a security expert, is joining me here in our Nairobi studios. Doctor, let's start with you. The UN peacekeepers have been stationed in countries, as we heard, across the globe over the past 70 years. Just how effective would you say these missions are?
Yeah, the UN peacekeeping has produced pretty mixed results in its history of peacekeeping in the last 70 years. Now, if you look at in the 90s in particular, where you had massive failures from Srebrenica when the Serbs overran the enclave there, massacring 8,000 Muslims, on the face of the United Nations peacekeepers, to 1994 Rwanda genocide, when the UN peacekeeping mission there was pretty much, or assistance mission, was pretty much impotent on the face of the marauding Hutu extremists. They didn't do much, but they have, you know, tried to seal these loopholes over the years, and we've seen that they've become much more effective. And we see in Sierra Leone, in particular, UN peacekeeping mission there posting significant results. Much more recently, of course, there have been significant attacks on the UN peacekeeping missions themselves because the terrain there, like in Mali, Central African Republic, is that you have the non-state actors that are also belligerents, that are carrying out ambushes and attacks on the United Nations peacekeeping missions.
You do mention those attacks. So what can you tell us maybe about some of the daily challenges that these men and women face on the ground?
Well, it's precisely these kind of attacks that are very difficult to imagine or predict that they are going to come, because essentially the UN peacekeeping missions go there to keep peace, not to fight and not to be aggressive. And in some cases, the non-state actors, particularly the terrorist organizations like in Mali, have been attacking the peacekeeping missions. Mali is one of the most dangerous missions for the peacekeepers in the history of the United Nations peacekeeping.
And finally, Dr. Ali, how much do you believe that the lack of support from governments in countries like Sudan and South Sudan, how much does that act as an obstacle to peacekeeping in those countries?
It's a game changer because the UN has got to be invited into a country by the state to actually come and keep the peace. So if the hosting country does not support them, will not support them, then they will be not be very effective. And lastly, and this is an important point, is the force mandate that is given to these peacekeeping missions. Chapter 7 and 8 of the laws that are now there or rather do give the UN peacekeepers a mandate to actually pursue criminals and others that are causing havoc to the population and targeting the peacekeepers themselves.
All right, Dr. Mustafa Ali, thank you very much for speaking to us on Africa Live. That was Dr. Mustafa Ali, security expert, speaking to us live here in Nairobi.